When Buick first introduced the Enclave nameplate to the States all the way back in 2007, it was a vehicle that was kind of designed to replace three different cars, technically two SUVs and a minivan. Now, when the Enclave name first came out, it was an instant hit for Buick due to its enticing blend of practicality, style, and of course luxury. And for 2025, Buick is introducing basically their most technologically advanced and luxurious Enclave ever, the all-new third generation version. As you guys know, this vehicle gets a full redesign this year, just like its platform mates, the GMC Acadia and Chevrolet Traverse, and with brand new exterior styling on the outside, a massively updated interior with a largest in the class 30-inch standard high-resolution display, and a brand new turbocharged four-cylinder under the hood. This promises to be the best Enclave that Buick has ever offered. Now, we've already had a chance to drive this vehicle out in Portland, Oregon for the first drive. However, this week, as you can see, Buick has loaned us the fully loaded version. This is a 2025 Enclave Avenir painted in this beautiful color called Ocean Blue Metallic. And the big question I want to answer, for those of you who are looking for a slightly more upscale family hauler without the snobbery that comes with the luxury badge, has the latest version of the Buick Enclave Avenir stack up. Stay tuned to find out. Now, before we start talking about the brand new exterior styling of this third generation Enclave, I thought I'd pop the hood and remind you guys what's powering this thing. Now, unlike the previous generation, which most of them came with a naturally aspirated V6, Buick is kind of going with the whole downsizing theme here, replacing that old V6 with a large four-cylinder, 2.5-liter turbo direct injection engine. Now, if you guys have seen my review on the Traverse and the Acadia, you'll know that this engine first made its debut in this trifecta of new family SUVs. It's essentially a different version, a transversely mounted version of the 2.7-liter turbo 4 that you find in something like the GMC Canyon and the Chevrolet Colorado midsize pickup trucks. Now here, this 2.5-liter four-cylinder, which also has double overhead cams, direct injection, delivers 328 horsepower and 326 pound-feet of torque. Those numbers are actually quite impressive. It's around 18 more horsepower than the old V6 and around 60-ish more foot-pounds of torque. It also makes it more powerful versus the base engines that you're going to find in the Lexus TX350, an Infiniti QX60, and an Acura MDX, of course, the non-hybrid or non-performance variants. It all goes out through an 8-speed automatic transmission. So that's one less gear compared to the old V6. And you could take your pick between either front-wheel drive or the company's twin-clutch all-wheel drive for an extra $2,000, which my test car has. Fuel economy is rated definitely an improvement over the old V6. The front-wheel drive versions can do as good as 20 in the city, 27 on the highway. If you guys get all-wheel drive like my test car here, it drops to 19 in the city, 24 on the highway. This engine is designed to run on regular fuel. It has a 21.7-gallon fuel tank. You should be able to do around 450-ish miles of range on a full tank. Now, Buick doesn't quote a 0 to 60 time. The last time we tested one, we got 7.8 seconds. I'll try it here in my local roads and see if we can get a slightly faster time. Top speed should be around 120 to 130-ish miles an hour. This is a big 3-row family SUV. It can still tow a maximum of 5,000 pounds, and as this car sits, it weighs in at just under 4,800 pounds, literally the same weight as the Chevrolet and GMC cousins. If you guys are looking for a hybrid powertrain or an up-level powertrain, this is where Buick doesn't offer anything, so I'm hoping at some point GM or Buick will eventually introduce an electrified version of the Enclave. But let's go ahead and close up this hood here and talk about the exterior styling. Now, as you can see, this color, Ocean Blue Metallic, is absolutely stunning. It's one of my favorite colors that I've seen on any GM product for sure. It works well with the lines of the new Buick Enclave. In fact, if you guys are keeping score of the Buick portfolio, this is essentially the last vehicle to get their updated design language that was adopted from the Buick Wildcat EV concept car that they showed a few years ago. You can see the front end has the trendy look here where you have this separate daytime running light and turn signal that's full LED. Down here at the lower fascia, you have the LED headlights, which are LED low and high beams. No fog lights on the vehicle. You can see it has the corporate Buick grille here, which the Avenir gets a slightly different finish to the grille with the extra chrome, the gloss black trim, the new Buick logo here with the tri-shield insignia with the 3 different colors, which certainly helped it look a lot more modern, a lot more upscale. The Enclave Avenir also includes the chrome along the front splitter. You have some functional air vents as well that allows air to cool that engine. You have really nicely integrated parking sensors. The front camera is also mounted here right in the front and center of the grille, which is a nice position for it. And overall, the fascia that we first saw basically on the Encore GX or the Envision, for example, it works okay on this vehicle, although I have to admit that the front end of this car is looking a little generic to me. Although some would argue that it looks better than the previous generation. Let me know in the comment section below. I personally think that the Traverse is actually the best looking vehicle in this, cousin or triplet set of SUVs. Now moving around the side profile, you can see the Enclave has always been one of the biggest vehicles in the segment, and that continues here. This is actually the longest vehicle compared to the GMC and the Chevrolet at 207.6 inches long. It's about 8 inches longer than something like the Acura MDX, even 4 inches longer than the Lexus TX, and almost 10 inches longer than something like the Infiniti QX60. So that's kind of where Buick wants you to compare this vehicle. It has a 121 inch long wheelbase, nearly 80 inches wide. All Enclaves have around 7.3 inches of ground clearance. You can see the Avenir trim includes these absolutely gorgeous 22-inch multi-spoke pearl nickel wheels, which these 22-inch wheels are large and in charge. They're riding on a 275 by 45 R22 tire. The other trims will have a 20-inch wheel as standard. You can get a 22 as part of an upcharge. It's part of an option package that basically for an extra $2,000. I love how the Avenir also comes with adaptive dampers. You have a fully independent suspension, no air suspension, but this is the only trim to get the adaptive dampers, so it promises to give you the best ride quality. You also have these nicely finished full paint finish along the window trim. There's not that overgrown cladding that you typically see, which gives this a much more sleek and sophisticated look. The mirrors are also power folding, integrated turn signals, cameras, of course, throughout. You have chrome, lots of chrome along the side and on the roof. For those roof rails, that goes with the whole luxury Avenir theme. There's even chrome along the door handle trim. And then you can see that panoramic sunroof is going to be standard on the Avenir. That is part of a $1,500 a la carte option that you're going to find on the other trims. So that's, again, another reason to go for the Avenir. And I'm backing away from this angle here. You can see the new Enclave definitely looks a little bit less minivan-like, but it also still kind of gives you that family vehicle vibe. I have to say, I do prefer the rear end styling of this vehicle more than the front. I really like how the Avenir trim gives you kind of the monochromatic look for the full LED taillights. You can see it has that trendy full LED design with the LED light bar. It has that new Buick logo here, lots of chrome along this portion of the tail light. You can see the turn signal also full LED, just like the brake lights and the reverse lights. You can see lots of badging back here as well. It says Buick to the side, and then there's an Enclave all-wheel drive badge there to let you know that you have all-wheel drive. I also really appreciate this little detail here where the tri-seal insignia is embedded into the actual tail light design, where it also illuminates, which I think is a nice little detail. And then down here at the lower bumper, you can see the rear fascia looks particularly nice. I love the rectangular dual exhaust system on this car. Although if you look at the Traverse and Acadia, they actually go with a quad outlet exhaust system, which I actually think looks even better versus the dual. There is a digital camera, rearview mirror, a nicely, protruding rear spoiler at the top. Surprised the rear window wiper didn't want to be hidden underneath there, although it would take up the space where that camera is, of course. And then looking at the cargo area, you can see the Enclave, being one of the biggest vehicles in the segment, has pretty much the same cargo capacity as its cousins. So with the third row seat up, which it is standard, you get just under 23 cubic feet of storage space, which is definitely large. This is actually the biggest in the class when you don't count its other GM siblings. You can see there are buttons here to basically lower the third row, and it looks like lower the second row captain's chairs. If you lift this up, you can see there's a pretty deep storage area here, which provides even more, underfloor storage, hidden storage, which is nice. If you want to fold down the seats back here, you basically just push that. Actually, that folds the second row. Fold the third row, you can basically push this button, and that will fold the third row for you. Although I'm surprised it didn't want to go all the way down, but not sure why I didn't want to go all the way down, but basically Buick says with the third row seat folded, you'll get around 57.1 cubic feet of space. Fold down everything, you get around 97.5 cubic feet of space. 97.5 is about 25 more cubic feet of space versus the Acura MDX and the Infiniti QX60, but it has roughly the same cargo space as the new Lexus TX, which is kind of a dig against Buick because this car is, like I said, around 4 inches longer than the Lexus. Now moving on to the interior of this all-new Buick Enclave. You guys probably noticed the exterior definitely looks a lot different, but the inside is where Buick also made a lot of strategic changes. Now first, before we get inside, let me show you guys the key fob. This is the current intelligent access key that Buick is using in all their newer models. It has the new logo here. It has the typical buttons that you would expect for lock, unlock, remote start, power liftgate, and a panic function. The key itself is nice. It's a good size. It also feels relatively high quality. You guys also saw it has a walk-away auto lock feature, where if you have that turned on, it'll beep as I close the door with the key fob on me and walk away. It also will power fold those mirrors. As you can see, approaching the door handle here, it's a traditional pull style door handle. It has a chrome button here on the outside. That's the button that you use to lock and unlock the vehicle if you don't have the walk-away lock feature turned on. If you touch the back of the door handle, that doesn't unlock the door. Again, you have to push the button again. That will unlock the door and unfold the mirrors. Now, my particular test car has the ebony perforated leather interior with the contrast gray stitching and piping, which certainly looks nice. The Avenir is the only trim to get the full upgraded leather interior, as opposed to the leatherette that you're gonna find in the other trims. You can see it also has Avenir stitched into the head restraints, which is nice. I like the leather as well. It feels pretty high quality. The seats are also heated and ventilated, and you also have a massage function. These seats also adjust in 12 different ways, which is nice, and you can also adjust the bolstering of these seats. It certainly is a nice looking interior. I personally would go with the gray with the blue interior, which I've shown you before when we first had a chance to drive this vehicle. You can see the door panel, as you can see, has a nice soft touch injection molded plastic with the contrast gray stitch. There's some aluminum trim here for the 16 speaker Performance Series audio system. This is the upgraded Bose system that you got with the Avenir. There's also a wood trim here, which I believe Buick said was genuine. It certainly looks nice. Pretty much looks like it was pulled out of a GMC Denali vehicle. I also love the copper accents here and the leather padding here. The window controls, they are one touch up down for all four, but only the driver's side is one touch up and down, which I find to be infuriating in a vehicle that's supposed to be a luxury-ish car. Down here it is hard touch plastic, and you can see there's additional storage. The car continuously keeps beeping because I left the headlights on, so I apologize for that. It is super annoying at times as I get in. You can see it has a nice easy step-in height with 7.3 inches of ground clearance, and as I shut the door, to shut that incestuous beeping off, you can see it has a pretty solid sounding thunk, which is nice. You can see that screen there is certainly a showstopper when you see it for the first time. It is a 30-inch high-resolution display, and it's standard on every version of the Enclave, which is nice. You can see start-stop button is located down here. Turning the vehicle on, you can hear it has, again, the latest Buick chime, the gauges, digital, as you can see, and in the center you can see there's also wireless Apple CarPlay and Android Auto, which is nice. Technically it's one screen, but there is a noticeable division here where it goes to the infotainment from the instrument panel screen. This instrument panel screen is also slightly customizable. If I push this button right here, you can actually put Google Maps there in the instrument panel, or you can also put Apple Maps there, which is nice, or you can go to their driver assistance information, or go to a traditional gauge pod, which I think looks decent. It's certainly better versus the lower end Buicks and the previous generation. You can see the steering wheel looks like it was pulled out of a Mazda with its 3-spoke design. That's for the Super Cruise. That's the status bar along with the camera that watches your face. It also has paddles on the wheel to control the 8-speed auto. The steering wheel also has a power tilt telescoping function. This is the only trim to give you that power tilt telescope, so it certainly makes you feel like you're in a luxury car, which is nice. There's also some aluminum trim here. You have soft touch injection molded plastic at this upper portion with the contrast fake stitching. This right here, however, feels more like real leather, and along here, which is definitely nice. The design of this vehicle, to me, is a little over-styled. I mean, I like the way it looks compared to the previous generation, but as you can see, when you have the CarPlay screen up, this is kind of an unused area right here. Now, they did kind of try to make it look usable by including the background from CarPlay onto the rest of this border here, but you can see once you're connected, it's pretty quick and snappy and responsive. Really, you're going to find more use out of it if you go back to the native system where it goes and uses the entire display, which is definitely nice. And then you can also scroll over to the Google Maps, and the Google Maps, as you can see, brings up the entire display, which is fantastic. I think that is where you get the beauty of the screen. Remember, it also has Google built in, so you can download stuff from the Google Play Store. You can also pull up Waze, which, as you can see, Waze or Spotify, in addition to downloading different apps, which is nice. Your headlight controls are located in the screen. A lot of GM vehicles have been going to that. You can see to access that, you go to see more controls, or you can also just pull it from down here. You can see that's a quick access to do it. I've had it in the auto position or in the on position, which is why it constantly kept beeping at me. But you can see the resolution and the software behind it is also quick, snappy, and very responsive. Your climate control is in the screen. In addition to being in this lower portion here, your heated and cooled seats are also in the screen. The cooled function works well, which I really appreciate. And you get tri-zone automatic climate control. There's also a massaging seat, which if I push a little button here on the seat back, you can see it brings up the massage, or you can also kind of adjust the lumbar, and that allows you to kind of adjust the massage as well. Again, just one type of massage roll, and it's 3 different intensities. The massage is super annoying because it basically just feels like it's inflating and deflating the bolsters. So I just found myself turning the massage off. I didn't even want to use it because I just found it to be a super annoying feature as opposed to actually, being really nice. So Buick needs to definitely work on the massage function. The ambient lighting in this car also is pretty impressive. This is the only trim, I believe, to give you all the customizable ambient light. There's actually an ambient light strip in the door panels going onto the dash. It's got some ambient lighting in the actual footwells as well. So it definitely looks nice at night. And I think Buick has definitely stepped up their ambient light game. So I really appreciate that. Again, you have to go for this top Avenir trim to get the upgraded ambient lighting. So kind of keep that in mind. Down here, you can see there's some nice toggles for your dual zone climate control function, some piano black trim, your air vents, you can see are kind of mounted low with some piano black. You have a USB-A and a USB-C. The dash design, as you can see, I mentioned earlier, is a little over-styled, but let me know what you guys think in the comment section below. There is a heads-up display included on this trim. It's available on the other trims as well. And then Buick was really proud of the fact that they have a floating center console here compared to compared to the other vehicles that uses this platform. You can see there's a big volume knob here. Your wireless phone charging pad is here. Big cup holders. Lots of piano black plastic and additional storage here, which is nice. This is a nice padded center console. You can see underneath there, it is a pretty deep storage area, which is also great for those longer trips. If I open this up, you can see 2 levels of storage. That actually is pretty deep. If you look into there, that's actually pretty nice, where you can put a couple things. You can hide it underneath, you know, a covered area, which I really like. The leather also feels pretty high quality and plush. The seats don't really hold you in for bolstering, but they are, you know, really soft and good for longer road trips. I don't love how the headrests, for me, they protrude a little too far out, and you can basically just move it up or down. Buick doesn't let you adjust the angle of the headrest, which, again, try the seats out for yourselves. Make sure you like them. The 16-speaker Bose audio also sounds pretty good if you guys are an audiophile, but the standard setup is a 12-speaker setup. I need to spend a week with it to see if the audio system is worth the upgrade for the Avenir trim, because it's, again, it gets 4 more speakers. Open up the glove box, it's huge, it's bin style, it's damped but not lined with felt. In terms of the material quality, I am relatively impressed. The build quality seems good. Fit and finish seems good as well. I didn't hear a single squeak and rattle. I only noticed a couple of panel fitment issues around there, but that's kind of a more minor detail. So again, it's good to see Buick kind of stepping their game up there. You have an auto dimming rearview mirror here, which also includes a digital camera rearview mirror that's included with the Super Cruise package. There's a woven material on the headliner. You have sunglass holders here. You have LED map lighting, and you also have a retractable shade. As you can see, the panoramic sunroof is standard on the Avenir. It's $1,500 extra on other trims, and you can see it also gives you the ability to open it up to vent air, which is nice. But as you can see, it only opens up over the 2 front seats, which is kind of how it is for most other vehicles. That's the largest, actually no, that's the largest that it opens. So again, pretty nice. There's also a built-in wind deflector as well. So this is good for, you know, a dark cabin like this with letting in a lot more natural light. But overall, the interior definitely is a huge step up compared to the previous generation. But if you guys are remembering my review on the Traverse and the Acadia, those models had a 17.7-inch center screen or a 16-inch display, which technically isn't as big as the Buicks. But if you don't include this portion here on the Buick screen, technically this Apple CarPlay screen is among the smallest. And I also forgot to mention your transmission selector is here. Put into reverse, there's your top-down 360 camera, which again gives you a full view with an overhead view, but the amount of screen that it uses for the camera is actually a little bit small. So this is, you know, even though it's the largest compared to its rivals and also compared to the other GM twins, the usable amount is technically smaller, so kind of keep that in mind. This again kind of reminds me of a dumbed down, smaller version of what you're going to find in the newest Cadillac products with their 33-inch curved high-resolution display. Now moving to the back seat of the new Buick Enclave. Remember, this is a family vehicle that can seat up to 7 people, so this is an area where a lot of people are also going to be looking very closely when trying to make a decision. Now you can see all Enclaves come with captain's chairs. If you guys are looking for a bench, you're going to have to check out either the Chevy or the GMC, which does limit the seating capacity of this vehicle to 7 as opposed to 8. Thankfully, the third row does seat 3 people across. The Avenir trim includes, again, the same beautiful ebony leather here with the contrast gray piping and stitching with the Avenir badge actually in the seat back or in the headrest of the second row, which is nice. You can see the material quality in the second row also carries over, where you have the soft touch injection molded plastic with the faux stitching, the real wood trim, perforated leather here, and metal speakers for the Bose stereo. I also like the way the door handles feel, pretty high quality, and the bronze accents here look nice. It's all hard touch plastic down here, but again, no retractable shades. This is something that I complained about in the first drive. Hopefully Buick will add that for the next model year, because it's a feature that I think a lot of families are going to like. The door does open up pretty large here, which is good for kind of getting the extra space that you need. But once you hop back here, you can see the second row offers basically near top of the class levels of space. There's also a completely flat floor here, which is nice. Buick says you have around 41.5 inches of total legroom in the second row. Now, obviously you can adjust that based on where the seat positioning is. This is with the seat all the way back. If you move it up a little bit to give third row passengers more space, it's going to eat into the room. As you can see, there's also three-zone climate control, so you have your own set of climate control functions here. You have 3-level heated seats. You have 2 more USB-C charging ports and an actual power outlet. No ventilated seats back here, however. A lot of the competitors would offer that, so surprised that it's missing that considering this is an Avenir trim. The sunroof, as you can see, also lets in a ton more light. It goes into basically the second row area, which is nice. I love the armrests here. There's a nice little open area to get into the third row. And then in terms of the space, headroom wise, you can see I have a good maybe 2-ish inches of additional clearance, which is nice, even though the sunroof does take up some more space. You have LED map lighting here. Your actual vents for the climate is located on the ceiling, which is also a nice touch. But overall, you can see this is pretty much as spacious as the front seat area. It's just missing a couple of features that would really send this over the edge to remind you that you're in a luxury-oriented brand. Now, getting into the third row area, Buick also makes that pretty easy. Basically, just push this little button right here. That allows the seat to kind of slide forward, and it gives you a pretty good amount of space to get into the third row area. And you can see the third row is wide enough to sit 3 people across, but I do want to point out a couple of things here. First of all, when I push this seat back here, it doesn't go all the way into its rearmost position, which this position basically, I think, allows you to get around 32.5 inches of legroom in the third row area. That's what Buick says. However, that's going to come with an asterisk because this seat's not all the way back. So I can sit back here at 5'7" with the seat in this position, but as you can also see, you have a lot less legroom in the second row versus when the seat's all the way back. Now, this is with the seat all the way back, so let me show you guys what the space is like with the seat all the way back. And this is where it's kind of a problem because, ow, my foot literally gets stuck trying to squeeze it in here. Holy smokes, that's terrible. But once you're in here, you can see my knees are basically jammed up against this seat. So you can't sit back here if you're an average size adult like myself with this seat all the way back. It has to be slid forward slightly to give you more room. And that's kind of a problem considering how big this car is. I can sit into a Lexus TX with the second row all the way back, and I still have space back here to sit. So I don't have to ask the second row passenger to move their seat forward, which I think is a kind of a silly omission on Buick's part and GM's part in general. You can see you have USB charging ports here. You have cup holders. It is hard touch plastic here. Same thing on the other side. Your third row air vents are located in the ceiling. That's something that the Acura MDX does not have. So bravo on Buick for having that feature. You also have LED map lighting here. And then in terms of the headroom space, there's a nice little carve out here to basically give me like an extra 2-3 inches of additional clearance. So again, headroom space is good. It's wide enough to apparently sit 3 people across, but this right here is a huge issue for me. And again, for a vehicle that's this large, the third row should be able to accommodate full-size adults without having to ask the second row passenger to move their seat up slightly. So here we are back behind the wheel of the flagship vehicle in Buick's lineup, the all-new 2025 Buick Enclave. I've had the opportunity to basically spend a full week with this car's platform mates, the all-new Chevrolet Traverse and the GMC Acadia. The Buick is going to be billed as the most plushest and most luxurious version. As you guys know, Buick always tries to kind of occupy that white space between a mainstream and a premium luxury brand. And I have to say, first impressions in the Enclave are quite good. I definitely like the exterior design of this vehicle, especially the Avenir trim with its pearly nickel 22-inch wheels and the all full paint finish. It certainly looks like an attractive vehicle that could compete with cars like the Acura MDX, Lexus TX, and the Infiniti QX60. Unfortunately, Buick has equipped the Enclave with a powertrain, a new turbo 4-cylinder that isn't quite up to snuff when it comes to refinement. Now, thankfully, it does have a lot more power, about 18 more horsepower than the old V6. About 60-ish more pound-feet of torque. The last time I 0 to 60 tested the Enclave in Portland, I got 7.8 seconds. Let's go ahead and see what we can get here now that we have the vehicle back home in our usual test strip. We have it in its sport mode. We have the all-wheel drive system locked. We'll go ahead and we'll brake torque it. Definitely doesn't like being brake torqued. We got 7.73 seconds there. Now that is, it ticks quicker versus what I got back in Portland, Oregon, but I'm definitely noticing just how dull the throttle response feels with this car. There's almost like a noticeable amount of turbo lag until the turbo finally wakes up, and then the 8-speed auto, you know, is slow initially, but then it starts shifting a little bit faster. That time is about 0.3 to 0.4 or 5 seconds slower versus what I got in the Traverse and in the Acadia on that same stretch. I'm going to try it one more time up ahead. I'm not going to brake torque it this time though, and see if we can get a slightly faster time. I am a little bit disappointed with how sluggish this car feels. Now, the Enclave is the biggest version of basically the triplets, although according to the spec sheet, the curb weight is honestly pretty much the same as the GMC and the Chevrolet, so they should be pretty similar in terms of performance. But let's try a run here. This time, however, it's more slightly uphill. Definitely feels quicker when you don't brake torque it. Eight seconds there, so I'll try it one more time on our third stretch of road where it's more level and see if we can get a slightly better time than 7.7. Again, you don't buy a vehicle like this for that, but it is nice to know, you know, how this car fits compared to its rivals. I mean, obviously, you could buy a Lexus TX 350, which also has a 4-cylinder turbo. I think the last one I tested did 0 to 60 in 7.2 seconds. There's also the Acura MDX with its naturally aspirated V6. And then I haven't had a chance to spend a full week with the new Infiniti QX60, which also just swapped out its V6 for a turbocharged 2-liter 4-cylinder with a new 9-speed auto. This 8-speed certainly is a smooth transmission. That's the one thing about this 8-speed. It lost a gear compared to the previous generation, but it is a relatively responsive and smooth transmission. It's just this engine, it sounds coarse and thrashy, and it's also very unrefined. It's not a good engine when you really need to put your foot down. I mean, it does offer a lot of torque, which is nice, a lot of mid-range torque, but the sound, considering Buick is all about their quiet tuning, which I have to say, the vehicle is relatively quiet in terms of road noise, in terms of wind noise. It just has too much engine noise. I was kind of hoping that Buick would have put a lot more sound deadening between, I guess, the engine and the firewall area to kind of keep that protruding engine noise from coming in. Those of you who have the old Enclave are going to be missing the sweet snarls of the V6 that was under the hood previously. Now, in terms of the handling dynamics, this is the this is the Avenir trim, which means it has the adaptive variable suspension with the bigger 22-inch wheels. The ride quality is perfectly good. It's not the plushest riding SUV, but I suspect Buick probably put the adaptive suspension on this trim because they made the 22-inch wheels as standard. Again, just doing a half throttle there, it feels perfectly adequate, but this is where rivals with their hybridized powertrains, with their twin turbo 6-cylinders, like for example, a Lincoln Aviator or Ford Explorer ST, for example, or a Platinum, have considerably more power. So I will be curious to see, you know, what GM does eventually, because they are planning to go back into hybrids, and I think that's definitely going to benefit a vehicle like this especially. We'll try another run here. It's very level. We'll just floor it. Still feels pretty soft. All right, we got 7.4 seconds there, which actually matches the time perfectly of the last GMC Acadia Denali that we tested, which has the same powertrain. The Traverse is technically the quickest accelerating vehicle that I tested at 7.25, which honestly isn't that much faster, but it certainly is adequate, but it's also disappointing for those of you who are comparing it to the rest of its rivals. But I'm gonna go ahead and switch the drive mode here out of sport. We've been in sport the whole time. We'll switch it into the touring mode, which is basically the comfort version, or comfort mode. This is where the dampers get a little bit softer, the steering gets a little bit lighter, the transmission tries to upshift a little bit more soon, or quickly to kind of get you into that top gear. And this is where the adaptive suspension does get a little bit softer, and this again gives you that plusher ride quality that you're looking for. I'm not entirely sure if it's, you know, the plushest riding vehicle in this segment, but it very much feels like it belongs in the same space as like an MDX or a QX60 or a Lexus TX. The seats, I will say, also are this is the upgraded perforated leather, where it's actually a real leather material. There is a massaging seat function, which is the only vehicle in the triplets that offers a massaging seat, but I would honestly skip the massage because it's just one of those annoying lumbar massages, which kind of just inflates and deflates the back lumbar bolster, which I find to be super irritating. It's not my cup of tea. but it does go down the road nicely. This is going to be great for road trips. In terms of visibility, the dash is very expansive. You have to get used to the fact that you have to look past this very long dash with the long hood, this big A-pillar here. The view out of the side is decent, the view out of the back is good, and you also have that digital camera rearview mirror included when you guys add the Super Cruise option, which my test car has, which, by the way, this is the first Buick ever with Super Cruise, and I'm just surprised it took them this long to add Super Cruise when it's been around in Cadillac models since like 2017. But it works pretty much as good as any other GM vehicle. It'll execute lane changes. It'll keep you centered in the lane perfectly when it has those roads mapped out, and it's amazing for long road trips. Super Cruise is available on every trim of the Enclave, including the base Preferred, which honestly the Preferred is incredibly well equipped. In terms of fuel efficiency, this model is rated at 19 in the city, 24 on the highway, and I was averaging around 18 mpg in mixed driving. On the highway, I got around 25 mpg, which is also pretty decent. This engine is designed to run on regular fuel. It has just under a 22-gallon fuel tank, and I got around 450-ish miles of range on a full tank. The trip computer showed 470, but I was getting around 450 in my week's worth of testing, which is pretty good. It has a bigger gas tank than some of its rivals, which is nice for longer trips, but man, imagine this powertrain hooked up with a powerful electric motor. Would love to see Buick and GM offer something like that. But again, this powertrain, this four-cylinder just sounds coarse and thrashy. And I have to say that a lot of other four-cylinders in the segment don't sound great, but this is probably one of the worst sounding in my opinion. So my recommendation, try the engine out for yourself. See if you're okay with the somewhat odd noises that it makes, a lot of the whining noises as well, I don't love. But once you get past that, the rest of this vehicle is certainly very plush. It's really well put together. I didn't hear a single squeak and rattle in this interior. I would go for the lighter gray with the blue interior for sure versus this ebony black with the gray accents, which does look nice if you guys prefer a darker interior. But overall, compared to the Traverse, the Acadia, and the Enclave, I mean, this model here that we're driving is not that much more than an Acadia, but it is a little bit larger, and it gives you the massaging seats, which again, I would skip. But personally, this one here at the top end, I think is a little bit overpriced. But the good news is if you step down to the Preferred or the ST trim, you can basically save yourself about $10,000, which I think could be the sweet spot for the new Enclave. Now, with just under 40,000 units sold in America last year, the Buick Enclave was without a doubt one of the top-selling vehicles in Buick's North American portfolio. So after spending a full week with the all-new third-generation model, it's pretty clear that Buick wanted to basically improve on a lot of the shortcomings of the previous generation, which was really primarily focused around the technology aspect because it really only topped out at an 8-inch display. That new 30-inch display is such a huge improvement. It really brings this vehicle to the top of its game in terms of technology. In terms of the exterior design, I actually really like the way Buick has kind of updated the look of this car. I particularly like it more from the rear, where I don't particularly think that the new front end that we've seen on other Buicks kind of fits quite as nicely on this vehicle. In terms of the front fascia, I think the Acadia is the best looking, but from the rear, I do appreciate the way this car looks. In terms of the ride and handling dynamics, the Avenir trim obviously is the one you're going to want if you want the plushest ride with the adaptive dampers, although I need to spend some time with a Preferred or an ST trim with the smaller 20-inch wheels because these 22s do transmit more in terms of bumps and imperfections in the road. In terms of handling, this is not a sporty vehicle, but it's certainly compliant and competent. The engine is really my biggest gripe with this vehicle. Just like in the Chevy and the Acadia, the engine is more offensive in the Enclave because of Buick's, again, more luxury pretensions. So I was really hoping that the company would have made the engine a little bit quieter and smoother and less coarse, but hopefully they'll rectify that at some point when they introduce an electrified version or a more higher end powertrain. A 3-liter twin turbo V6 from Cadillac would do wonders underneath the hood of this vehicle, so perhaps maybe the next generation XT6 will kind of get that upgrade, because right now the Enclave is definitely the most luxurious version of this particular, triplet of 3-row family SUVs. The second row space is huge, although I do think that Buick is lacking features like the retractable sunshade or ventilated seats or heated 3rd-row seats. You're going to find that again in a lot of its rivals, so it's really confusing to see it missing in this Enclave. The massaging seat is definitely a nice touch, but again, it's not like a really nice massage you're going to find in like a Volvo, for example, or a BMW or a Mercedes or an Audi. The cargo area is also large, but again, you're going to get that as well in the Traverse and in the Acadia. So in terms of, my recommendation for the Enclave, obviously, if you guys are partial to the design of this vehicle and you like the idea that Buick tends to be, more of a premium brand that occupies a white space, it certainly is worth a look. But my recommendation, I would actually skip this loaded version here because it is pretty darn expensive. Now, if you want to get into a base Preferred, this is where the Enclave's pricing is kind of really occupying an interesting middle ground, because a base Preferred with 2-wheel drive starts at around $45,000. Add $2,500 if you guys want the ST, which is basically preferred with some sportier black accents to give it a more youthful appearance. It might be worth it if you guys want to go for the ST. You can basically add Super Cruise and like a power package that includes memory seats and full power seats. For an extra $1,700, Super Cruise is around $3,200 to $3,700, depending on if you go for the preferred or the ST trim level. Going to the Avenir trim, this is going to cost you around $11,000 more, almost 11 grand more, and it starts at around $58,000, which is honestly really ridiculous. Buick needs to have a trim level in between the ST and the Avenir to kind of justify the steep price increase that you get with this model. Again, add $2,000 if you guys want all-wheel drive on either of the trims. Even at this top trim, however, you still have to pay extra for Super Cruise, which is an extra $3,700, which also includes the digital camera rearview mirror and the automatic parallel parking feature. But still, with Super Cruise and the destination charge, thankfully this color is a free item. You're looking at an as-tested price of just over $65,000. I know 65 grand for a vehicle like this definitely sounds overpriced. I also do want to point out, however, the last fully loaded Acadia Denali was around 64.9, basically 65 grand as well. You could also load up a Traverse to be around 60 grand for the top LTZ, or not really LTZ, the top RS trim. The last one I tested was the more off-road oriented model, which was around 55 grand. The sweet spot again for this trim here, or for this car, is going to be in the mid $50,000 range for a preferred trim with the Super Cruise and the power package option. So if you kind of keep the options in check, this is certainly an interesting alternative to vehicles like an MDX, an Infiniti QX60, or a Lexus TX. Those models start between 50 to 55 grand, but again, at 65 grand for this, you can easily get yourself a well-equipped version of the MDX, TX, or Infiniti QX60. And at that point, you may as well just go to the luxury brand to also get the dealer experience. Buick, again, kind of occupies that white space that gives you premium features without the snobbery of a luxury badge. With all that said, hope you guys have enjoyed my full overview on the brand new 2025 Buick Enclave Avenir. If you're also looking to see the latest cars I'm testing, be sure to follow me on Instagram at redline_reviews, like us on Facebook, and as always, guys, please keep subscribing to the Redline Reviews YouTube channel for all the latest reviews. Thank you so much for watching. I'll catch you all in the next video.